for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
WESN.
Sure, Michael Smalley, this is Talking Point to close out the week. A lot of different things that I just want to wrap up. A couple of things I'll just touch on quickly, and we'll continue at least this part of the conversation with our guests later on in the show. But of course, one of the ongoing issues we have in our social breakdowns or breakdowns of order in our society is school violence. Now, at least for now, there seems to be a relative limit, but we've already seen significant levels of assault and injury from assault, as well as, I believe, at least one stabbing. With regards to school students, we've also seen teachers being caught up in the assault because, to some extent, an unfortunate twist of irony, the students are not going to stop at the presence of a teacher, so they're going to continue the violence, at least in one case, right? That made significant headlines or went viral. And then what is a teacher to do? Because as I've said before, when that case happened, it's not as though they could use violence to suppress the students who are attacking a fellow student, or to try to counterattack or to fight back to stop students attacking another student. They can't necessarily do that, right? Especially depending on the details, male teacher, female students, that'll be even worse. But even female teacher to male students, that's not advisable for a whole host of reasons. And then what's left for the teachers to do? Ignore it? Run around and like a chicken with its head cut off and do nothing? Call the police and wait and hope that the response time is in time because the student in front has been beaten now, put their body in harm's way and take some of the blows, and still yet on a certain level legally not be allowed to fight back. Because who knows who will want to sue, and I don't know if the law covers it. In my opinion, there should be some amount of protection for teachers to utilize self-defense and the defense of students who are being attacked. And yeah, but that might have unintended consequences I'm not looking at any moment. So I'm not saying that's automatically a good idea. Now, of course, police in schools, it's not a new idea. It's not even new for the time period, right? It's not as though we've tried it decades ago and now we're trying it again. No, we've been talking about it for the last, I don't know how many years at this point. And my go-to initial response is, well, how much more you want the police to do? Do we have enough officers to do this? Now, okay, they're going to deploy police in high-risk schools. What's the criteria for a high-risk school? What is a high-risk school? Are you going to say what a high-risk school is? Do you not want to say publicly what a high-risk school is? There's going to be a list of high-risk schools. All right. But again, what is the criteria? Because I'm sure there's going to be some schools who are going to say, but what about us? And it might be subjective. And then what the parents are going to say when they find out that their child is in a school that is on the list of high-risk schools. Now, that's one part of it. But the other part about it is, which I find, this is not entirely the totality of the situation, but the NPTA is supporting schools having police in schools, but they want deeper solutions to youth violence, which I find, again, slightly ironic, because when it comes to the path that school children are on, if you want immediate solutions, you could seek to the authorities. They could suspend, they could expel, they could punish in whatever way. Whatever punitive measures in the moment, they could do that very easily. If you want long-term solutions, that's kind of hard, especially since there is no version of long-term solution with a child's direction of a child's life that does not require, in an extremely significant way, parental involvement. So, and they acknowledge students, and I think I have this literally as a lower third when Ashraf comes in, but they acknowledge it's putting a plaster on the sore. That's nice, but I hate to say this, part of the issue of school violence is not what goes on in school, it's what goes on after school. And the school system doesn't really have the authority to dictate what goes on after school, outside of school, when the kids have to travel back home. So it's on the way home, it's in the community, and then it's in the home itself. Now granted, parents are not omnipotent, they are not omniscient, they can't see everything and respond to everything that might interact with their child, especially if the child has to travel home, or the teenager has to travel home, and has to travel far, because depending on the school, I don't know if this is still done, but I remember when I went to school, there were guys coming far from the east, they had to wake up 3 o'clock in the morning to get there, and of course it would take a long time for them to get back home. They wanted to go to Fatima, that's fine. I don't know how that geographic part of the equation works out now in 2025, but it was a long commute. And if they're traveling on their own, who knows what could influence them between school and home, home and school, every day. But at the end of the day, the responsibility starts with the parent. And one of the things that I would have hoped is, I understand, yes, NPTA are not necessarily experts on some of these things, but it might help if you led with requests rather than just say, do something, because do you want the police to do something and the Ministry of Education to do something? And again, what are they supposed to do once the child leaves school? We don't have enough police cars to drop every child home. We don't have police buses or a state school bus system. What are they supposed to do once the school bell rings and the child leaves school? I don't know. And to some extent, I do wonder if this is the NPTA trying to tell somebody to fix a problem that they actually technically would have more responsibility for than the people who are there. They are requesting or demanding, depending on how you interpret their words, that the problem be fixed. Because school could do, as was said by speakers on the show, the school could do everything right. The police could have all the presence there. That is not necessarily going to stop a child from being influenced by bad influences, making bad decisions, or wanting to rebel against whatever. And in many ways, if the school tries to take more concrete, more strict, more expansive measures, while the rest of the child's life remains whatever it is to potentially contribute to their behavior, that inconsistency might only make it worse, not better. But we'll continue this conversation with Ashraf later on in the show. I want to move on to another story. It's a minor thing, but just something to point out. There was a case of a doubles vendor, I believe she's a doubles vendor, on the promenade, who, I believe the report is, she paid everything. They were supposed to meet with the mayor didn't show up, but they were told by the director from the project manager's office, this is the words of the vendor herself, told us that those who were up to date with payments could resume vending immediately. So she did that because she was up to date in payments. She had all her documentation. City police came, they basically, it is reported that they said that they did not care about her certification. It was irrelevant to them. They arrested her, confiscated her stuff, cost her a day of not being able to sell, which, depending, it is reported she's threatening legal action, and maybe she should. Also damaged her tent or whatever part of her setup. But I think at the end of the day, first of all, I have heard from the media masters, no, there are a lot of very well-educated police officers, well-trained police officers, very professional police officers. And we understand that. We understand that. I mean, we see the media ambassadors and their capacity, right? They are examples of the good side of the equation. The problem is things like this happen. And even if it might be the minority, this is how police officers, and this might actually not even be fair to the TTPS, because I don't know to what extent the TTPS itself is responsible for the training and oversight of city police, right? Because I know municipal police are not, they are, but they aren't, and then, you know, there's pretty larceny, and then there's estate police or water police or whatever, right? There's different classifications. They're not technically all, strictly speaking, TTPS. But the point is, as long as, because apparently all of these other bodies want to wear the same uniform and be acknowledged at the same level as part of the TTPS. Ironically, they don't realize whenever the TTPS looks bad, they're going to just, you know, catch some of that flack by default. But the flip side is whenever they do nonsense, the TTPS is also going to catch some heat for it. Because right now, even though it says city police, and that's what the report says, I don't know exactly where these, who these police work for and what their chain of command actually is. But the point is, it says police. And things like this, essentially, is what makes people think that too many police officers are stupid, cruel, corrupt, ignorant, and whatever other negative descriptor you could apply to this situation. Lacking of judgment, lacking of courtesy. Because is she a criminal? Think about it, right? You're there, you want to stop illegal vending. She has all her documentation. Why is that irrelevant? Did nobody tell you? Did you not double check? How are you so sure in your ignorance that you know exactly what's going on? And what now will come from the office of the mayor of Port of Spain will come of this for the city police that did this. Are they going to preemptively provide restitution to this vendor? Or are they going to try and basically play it off like if there was nothing to see here? But dare I say, who wants to be arrested in public? Not just have their working day disrupted and lose potential revenue, of which you still had to pay costs because it's a doubles vendor or a food vendor. So did they properly store it? Can she trust them that they did not mishandle food products that could spoil? And maybe all of that is a write-off? Yeah, this is how the reputation of police officers in the country continue to be worth, I don't know, less than the paper that the stories that bring these things up are printed on. There is no reputation for the police. And when the commissioner wants to say, I want police to be role models I don't know if these officers are part of your chain of command, and to some extent, I do think the TTPS as an organization, and where is the Police Social Welfare Association? And you might say, well, it's not their job. Time out. It's their job to ensure that their members' reputation isn't tarnished, unless these are their members. Well, then it's their job to ensure that the fallout does not affect the rest of their membership. But we don't necessarily think that far ahead, right? We don't think in that degree of long term. That's one of the issues with our society that makes me wonder, are we really wanting to develop, or are we just kind of happy being second, third rate with regards to how we operate and do our business as a society, as a people? Because what's that? I big and bad as ICE police. Now, they have that in America, don't get me wrong, but still, that's not an excuse. We're a small nation with a smaller police force. We can't afford that kind of stupidness. We don't have that much leeway. Now, there was a situation in Tobago with regards to the lawlessness of no man's land. There was a fight in no man's land. It's causing potentially certain tour operators to basically say, I'm pulling out, which ironically would be bad for no man's land, because if all the glass bottom boats and tow boat operators pull out, then there will be no customers to that, what seems to be a highly unregulated liming spot. And this is the thing. Everybody wants to be, oh, why? We don't have to be that serious, chill, relax. Well, somebody decided to do some nonsense because they feel there's big man and they can make big man decisions, and big man decisions was not thinking in the long term, and they may have more or less sunk that whole thing if they were depending on the operations of no man's land, the unregulated circumstances of no man's land. I don't know to what extent it's regulated or not. If they were depending on that in order to earn revenue, because they were making money off of that. Now already that situation, at least I know in the past, that situation was an issue for legitimate tour operators, and I don't mean the boat, the actual boats, although to some extent it might have been an issue for them, but legitimate travel agents who dealt with our foreign customers had issues with situations potentially like that, where everybody who all of a sudden see people doing barbecue decided I could do barbecue too. And that was one of the interesting phenomenons in Tobago, where you basically saw trends happening very quickly and being spread very quickly. And I know that food poisoning is just one of those things that some of those travel agents had concerns about, the foreign travel agents, because they had to worry about the foreign clientele. We had, years ago, one foreigner who was a customer of ours had to go to the hospital. Don't know exactly what they did the day before, but not entirely sure if it was food poisoning. Maybe it was, maybe they had some other condition, not too sure. So that situation in no man's land already, one could argue, was questionable. And now with the violence and the tour operators pulling out, this is just a sign that tourism in this country, if we want to take it seriously, here's an inconvenient truth. We have to take it seriously if we want to take it seriously. It might seem obvious, but the reality is we don't take it seriously while saying, oh, we should improve it and we should grow it and we should do this and that with it. And we don't take it seriously. We don't actually try to ensure that there's some sort of regulatory oversight to ensure that everybody is operating under a certain amount of best practices, operating with a certain minimum of standards with regards to quality control, health and safety, etc., etc. We don't necessarily have that. We don't have things like town and country planning, making sure no one just randomly builds some unsafe whatever, wherever. We don't have that. We don't have it seemingly for certain food and beverage situations, health inspectors. We don't have that. We don't have people looking at fraudulent business practices. But yet, you know, tourism, yes, tourism, good, yes. But we don't take it seriously. We don't care about it. It's not just the government, it's also everybody else involved. The local customer base, what do they want to do? Oh, it's Tobago, so it automatically has to be cheaper, and it automatically has to be whatever I want it to be in the moment, because I'm the customer and the customer is right. And who is you? You's not a hotel in New York, you's a hotel in Tobago. You're just some little itty-bitty person that should be happy to get my crumbs of money that I'm paying you. We don't take it seriously, from the customers to the government to the people actually in the industry. We don't take it seriously. Everybody's only thinking about short-term game, and regards, and why that's applicable to the government is that that's why they don't take on tourism, because the short-term game isn't there. And they can't, nobody thinks long-term in government. So we'll just forget about it. Customers don't think long-term about crapping on an industry that they want to enjoy. They don't care about that. And of course, the operators, they don't think long-term either. They'll exploit whatever they have to exploit. So I agree with the, when I say operators, I don't mean the tour boat operators in the story. I agree with them. To hell with that. All right, I want to move quickly. Of course, there's some concerns, there's some questions, and I'll just say this. There's a question, why is it that Tobago's health system has seemingly, at least the Signal Hill Hospital, runs of beds? And I think that's one of the things that Dr. Faith Brebner and the Division of Health and Wellness, I don't know if they could answer that right away, but I do think in the long run, that is a question that needs to be answered. They are trying to expand health services on the island to help support what they hope to be a growing population, although I would caution them to say there's probably a lot of other infrastructural needs to get the population to grow, right? And they want 100,000, basically, I guess you could say residents, right? Between visitors and actual citizens residing there, and maybe Trinidadians residing there, et cetera, et cetera. Do you have the capacity with regards to the inter-island ferry to support all that, or food production on the island itself? And that's just basic. Political leader of the Patriotic Front, Michaela Pandey, she's come out to speak against the attacks of the president, independent senators, and the judiciary, and the dismissal of workers by the government. Now, I don't necessarily agree fully with everything that she says, right? Think about it. The government that has the only ever female prime minister is sexist. Think about that, just by the way. The government with the only ever female prime minister on her second term, their motivation is sexism. And then, of course, some will say, well, of course, because they can't attack Kamala, so the misogynists are going after the president as a proxy or some nonsense. I'm fairly certain that's not the major motivating factor on that side of the thing. With regards to the workers, well, here's the thing, at the end of the day, while I don't necessarily agree with some of the arguments that's going against the government, the long and short is this: the government kind of set themselves up to be in this position, especially with regards to how they handle the CPAP firings or the contract terminations. How they're handling certain things is opening themselves up to criticism, and whether the criticism is fair or not is a separate conversation, because at the end of the day, why are you opening yourself up to criticism? You are coming across to a section of the population in a way that a lot of people are not going to appreciate. And it's one thing if you could just say, oh, well, it's all PNM. It's just the PNM. Sour grapes, PNM. Is Michaela Pandey PNM? Is she a sour grape? She might have sour grapes. She might be talking to the PNM. I don't know. But that's, I don't think most of the population will speculate on that. They're going to see someone who's not PNM saying these things. Just like when David Abdullah made certain comments, I think on the firings, right? Or other issues. And the more people who are not PNM speak about these things, the more the public will start to shift. It will take some time, but it can happen in 5 years. And the last thing the UNC as a political party wants is to weaken their position, which is nearly completely dependent on one person who probably will not go up for re-election in the next general election. Because really and truly, could any of these other long-term UNC parliamentarians who have been in parliament for the last 10 years, could any of them carry the party? All right. Let's go quick to the daily review. All right, we've got to keep fast, Director, try and keep up. Now, there's a couple of things that came out of the postcard press conference yesterday. First, Minister of Energy, Muriel Royal, he pointed to an error that happened under the Ministry of Energy with regards to certain, you know, watching the press conference, you would think I didn't hear anything of it, right? But there was a certain error that would have costed us potentially up to $7 billion, $1 billion US, generally speaking, right? The way how it is, it seems as though on the surface, it was an error in documentation, right? In how the revenue sharing was supposed to go. Now the question remains, was there nefarious purposes or was it just an error? Of which Stuart Young has come out to say, well, Cabinet did have nothing to do with these documentations. It was all done by ministry personnel, which in a strange way is both technically, it's technically true. It's throwing the public servants under the bus. To what extent is it throwing them under the bus unfairly? We don't necessarily know. Now, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sean Sobers, he also spoke about the UK visa situation, saying the previous administration had an opportunity to do something about it, but they didn't. Of which, and this is what I'm a bit more disappointed in, Dr. Emil Brown decided to say, well, you know, why is he talking about that? This is just an excuse, you know, to cover up the fact that the Prime Minister didn't go to the heads of government CARICOM meeting. Now, essential, and also saying, oh, well, they have an immediate solution to the UK matter. Well, that was a lie because look, they haven't done anything about it yet. Now, granted, I think one of the reasons why they haven't done anything about it yet was there are multiple things that they have to do. One of it is to make an amendment to a piece of legislation the UK government asked for, and Dr. Brown is saying, well, why didn't you do that? I would argue because they probably were looking to try and do everything all at once to make sure everything was all their T's were crossed and their I's were dotted, and they didn't necessarily want to go off half-cocked on this issue. The long story short is, Dr. Emil Brown, who wants to position himself as the experienced ex-Minister of Foreign Affairs and CARICOM Affairs that knows more than everybody else on these matters, is coming across as a technocrat with poor political acumen in this situation. Because he's not actually defending or giving an explanation as to why nothing was done with regards to the UK visa situation. He's just saying, yeah, well, they did this wrong, and that's the defense. But that's not a defense. Even if you want to criticize the current administration for not treating with the problem faster, and again, they've been there for what, 2 months? And this is the thing, I believe in one of the daily reports, right? I'm not going to look for it now. His reporters are basically saying, well, why didn't you deal with this? You've been there since April. Yeah, it's been 3 months. Thanks. It's not like they are not transitioning into government and have to play catch up. So I don't know to what extent that's reasonable of him to say. And to those who might question the reasonableness of the statement, it makes him come across as either malicious or incompetent. He's speaking about these things like if diplomacy happens in a vacuum. So this is not the best way to do it. And again, he's not actually addressing the situation that the current minister said, well, the reason why this happened in the first place was that literally nothing was done by the previous administration. No defense was offered to push back against that statement, which implies that that statement is 100% true. That's the implication. No attempt was made to push back against it, as far as I've read. You want to blame the current administration for not moving fast enough in the last 3 months, but you were the incumbent that allowed it to happen. Somehow, in that scenario, you have less blame. That's what you're trying to sell the public. That doesn't make any sense to me. That's why I say the former minister is coming across as a technocrat that lacks political acumen, which I find to be quite interesting, to be honest, the discussion on that point. And we have to wait and see how this turns out. With regards to Stuart Young, it's a bit more reasonable in a way. But again, I think both situations, basically, you must now wonder, do we attribute this to malice? Or should it rather, as the saying goes, be attributed to incompetence? Because I could see where, yes, unfortunately, under the previous administration, I could see where there were a lot of errors. But here's the trick. That's not to exonerate the previous administration. They lacked something that was a fundamental necessity when you are in government, and that is, as the government, it is your responsibility to oversee the public service and to hold them accountable. That's part of why you're there. It's not for us to do it. We can't do it. You're the elected officials. You're supposed to do it. There were too many instances of various mistakes made by various ministries in high-profile situations that conveniently, oh, well, it's their fault. It's not our fault. Cabinet didn't do it. They did it. You're in charge to ensure that these things don't happen as frequently as they did, and you failed to do that. But of course, one of the questions at the press conference was, maybe there might have been some kind of arrangement, and that's why the error happened that would have costed the country $7 billion, and I won't go on any further. But when I say arrangement, under arrangements, maybe, I don't know. And in that case, is it an error by the public servants, or was it an unofficial, verbal, no record instruction that was, maybe, I don't know. No answer to that. What are we supposed to think? If you don't communicate with us, you leave us, the public, to speculate on our own. Just to remind people on the issue with the president, it's on the UNC that started complaining about her. To some extent, at the same time or before, it was the people, including myself with regards to the independent senators. Since the merit list fiasco, which I will never forget. Let's take a break. We'll welcome our guests. Stay tuned.
Get ready for the biggest business-to-business event of the year, the Trade and Investment Convention, happening on July 17th to 19th at the Centre of Excellence in the Koya. Doors open from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on business days and 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Consumer Day. Dress code in effect for business days. Park and ride available from Constantine Park and UETGR North Car Park all days, and NAMDevco on the 17th and 19th. Sponsored by the Ministry of Trade, Investment and Tourism, Exim Bank, Balroop Group and Bmobile Business.
Do you need treatment for obesity or any related abdominal procedures? The community hospital now offers minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery done by an American-trained, board-certified surgeon with over 20 years' experience. Give us a call at 235-5479 for more information.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
If these walls could talk, they'd cry uncle. They didn't plan to become offices or yoga studios. But they've stood by us, even when we got a little stir-crazy. For that, they deserve some thanks. They deserve Benjamin Moore.
Struggling with heart health or frequent migraines? Discover the simple steps to reclaim your energy and vitality.
We're diving into a topic that affects about 422 million people around the world: diabetes.
Tune into Wellness Unlocked, the series that delivers expert advice, practical tips, and inspiring stories to help you take control of your health and well-being. Your health matters. Don't miss Wellness Unlocked. Watch now on WESN and take the first step toward better health.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage, and we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide: Center City Mall, Chaguanas, and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
And we're back here on Talk About the WSN, the Cognac Capital Show. Michael Small, joined by disaster management expert Ashraf Ali. And, you know, as I was saying it, I find this kind of funny. One could argue that disaster management could be a basic analogy for governing TNT on a daily basis. I'm just saying. Like, we're not a real place, folks. I'm just, you know.
Very interesting. And good morning, Sean, and good morning to all your listeners and viewers out there. It might really well be, you know.
Yeah.
And notwithstanding the disaster, I mean, we are really in a crisis situation financially.
Yes.
From a crime perspective, whether or not our crime murder rate is relatively okay at this point in time in comparison.
I'm not sure what it is for the last month and a half or so.
Yeah, it on a monthly basis, it's not as good as it. But
was it May? It was 30 or April? I think it was May.
Yeah, around that. So yeah. I would say when you look at the data that was presented some time ago, and the most recent from the organized police service, that I think our murder rate probably about 100 off from last year at the same point in time. Now, in perspective, that is good. But in a general note, we are still in a crisis situation because we have not really gotten out of it, because I cannot say that the country or the police service has done significant, put in significant efforts to say that, hey, we are going in a good direction.
Yeah.
We are now, I would say we kind of borderline hoping to be in a thing, so there's a lot more to do.
I would say this also, what compounds the sense of crisis for me is the poor public communication across the board, generally speaking. I mean, even ETTPS, who has one of the best programs in the country for public communication, right? You don't see many other entities have so many people out there speaking to the media and kind of exposing themselves to the public to that extent. But even with that, with regards to public communication, the reason why I say it is because you have things that happen, big things, small things, and you don't really get always communication in order to properly manage the expectations of the population and keep things reasonable. And a lot of the time, some of these things, they go out of control just because the communication is not there. So it makes a bad situation worse, right?
So I like our program, that one in communication, because in crisis management, we have crisis management communication, and specifically designed for sharing information in particular crisis. How the information is shared and by who the information is shared is very critical and very important, because the messaging is a critical part of getting that crisis under control. I listened to the post-cabinet briefing yesterday, and not only the post-cabinet, but I listened to, I viewed some of the comments. Which
you read comments on political broadcasts in this country at your own risk.
Because
at your own risk, folks.
And why I read some of the comments also is to get a sense of how the public view things.
Yeah.
And it gives you a better perspective.
Now,
and one of the
hold on, one thing, marketing. If you do a marketing course when it comes to things like surveys and customer feedback, and I think this is true now for feedback in general, especially in things like this. Generally, what you're going to get are the people that are the most happy and the most upset who comment. So you're not necessarily always going to get a good read on the total situation, because the whole chunk in the middle is silent, right?
It just gives you a
but it gives you an idea, yes.
A snippet of.
But it has gotten political analysts in trouble internationally when they kind of oversubscribe to what's being said on the internet, and then in hindsight, when you actually see the results of everything, you find out, oh well, the internet was just the loud minority.
Well, I am not going to make any pronouncements or political pronouncements on it. It's just for my edification in terms of understanding how persons views different.
Yeah, at least how some people think.
Statements are made and the type of comments. And one of the comments that the person will keep on asking is, where is the Prime Minister? Fair enough. Mm-hmm. Very good question, because I mean, I think we in our country, we have grown to, when we have a media brief, post-cabinet briefing or cabinet briefings, that the Prime Minister is there.
Yes. Not always, but most of the time.
However, from my experience and my training in crisis management, it is not about the leader only. The person, it's about the person who has the information and the most competent to give that information at a point in time. Now, when it comes to sharing of information, sometimes the person who is responsible for those areas is the best person to share that information. But but we have a tendency to want to always hear it from one. No, I don't want to make a comparison, a real comparison to how politics is and how crisis management is. But there are similarities in it. So,
especially with some of these topics that the politicians in the last couple of years had to deal with.
Exactly. So, but from me, from my personal perspective, I like sometimes to see that if you are responsible for an area, take that responsibility.
Okay, so I understand that, right? Because part of it is the systems that we use, they require some amount of delegation, because you cannot micromanage a government, right? Here's the flip side to that, right? Because even though you can delegate, right, and you can be present while and providing leadership functions while delegating and showing off your people. Not just they do the work and I take credit for the work, but you actually show them off. You let them get their credit. Because Marvin Gonzalez to some extent did it. Wasser had a project, maybe it was one of the maintenance shutdowns of the Carney plant, and as the whole, almost the entire north part of Trinidad, you're gonna have no water for 2 days. When they got the repairs done faster than scheduled, he came out in the press conference and he didn't say we did this and we did that. He said the people of Wasser, right, our people, they did a great job, they did this, they did that. He was still present as the minister. But he put the credit, he pushed the credit for the most part on the actual people who did the work, right? But his presence, and this is the thing with the current government, and I actually was saying this just now, a lot of the current government is centered around Kamala. A lot of the goodwill is centered around Kamala. A lot of the political strength of the UNC is centered around Kamala, right? This is it's not negative, it's not positive. It just is a consequence when you have power so centralized in one person, right? And in this case, we're fortunate because it's working out to some extent as a benevolent dictatorship in a way, right? But the problem is that system is highly dependent on, well, when they eventually go, who's next? But also, another thing that our system is dependent on is when a lot of it is in you, when a lot of the hopes are centered around you, when a lot of the expectations are centered around you, and you're not there. Well, the people now, I understand delegation.
I would say in that context, it will be up to the Prime Minister, the UNC, and their party to work that out, because it's a reality that they will have to be face sooner or later in the next couple of years.
Yeah. Well, not just that. I also think there are people who have concerns about their health, myself included, because this ain't an easy job.
It is.
Right?
It is
I mean, I'm sure with disaster management, part of it is you can't wear yourself out to the point that you're useless, because then, depending on how far up the totem pole you are, that could have detrimental effects.
It takes a toll, especially when it comes to decision making. The responsibility of making decisions that impacts a number of different persons and different variables that you have to consider. There's always pros and cons to making the decisions, and one of them that came out of that whole thing is the pros and cons of the demerit point system.
Yeah, so before we go down, I'll just say, I'm not saying it's a negative on Kamala. I am saying we don't want her to be in ill health, right? So we kind of have to understand, if that's one of the reasons why she's not always coming to these post-cabinet press briefings, generally I don't have a problem with it, but I think the country does want to see more of her. That said, we did see her pose for a picture with the minister. She wasn't there at the post-cab meeting, but Minister of Transport.
But even in the post-cab, there was an explanation as to...
Well, apparently she was actually still working.
Exactly, and Minister Monolal did in fact indicate that she's still in. So,
well, let's go to this, because to me, this was the biggest decision of the cabinet. I know that there were other things being said, but this was an actual policy decision that I actually agree with a lot, because it goes to what myself and I believe it's the South Association of Taxi Drivers were saying, and other people were saying.
Even myself was yourself. Even I was saying that.
But not all stakeholders. A lot of stakeholders want to say, well, don't scrap it, keep it, and they weren't addressing the fact that the complaints would be ignored by doing that. But the government took on the complaints, but showed a level of judgment saying, and it might seem obvious now, but again, we had a lot of stakeholders that did not make this point. We'll keep the criminal offenses, but we'll remove a lot of the other stuff because it's unnecessary.
And that makes a lot more sense, because we know that even in the criminal offense area, with those that are criminal offense, you could win that matter, but the point system will still, it's still about a point system. Now, the thing about it that was very interesting is that when you have 63 offenses, 66 offenses that are ticketable right? It's hard to have tickets, so much amount of tickets being, you're being ticketed as well as being penalized again with the point system. The point system really and truly, the intention may have been a good intention. The application, like I always say, the operationalization and the application of it left a bitter taste in a lot of the persons, and it was more kind of it appears to be very draconian to many of the road users and the ones that are using the road to earn a living, because it is very easy. It is very, very easy to rack up a number of points just by a police officer who is unreasonable, who's unreasonable, does not have a level of understanding or just wants to apply the law as the law indicated. Remember, we continue to say that there is a level of this, you can make judgments on the law. If you don't make those,
there's some amount of subjectivity, right?
Yeah, exactly. And if you apply the law as the law states, then you cannot blame the police officer.
But also, like, this is not directly associated, but the situation with the vendor, where she was told she could continue and she had the documentation, and he said the documentation is irrelevant, your permissions are irrelevant. Like, there could be situations where the user not only doesn't know that they are violating traffic regulations, but depending on some quirk of circumstance, they might not actually be violating, but the police officer who comes on the moment, Johnny, on the spot, doesn't know what's going on and just says demerit points.
Exactly. So you have law enforcement personnel. Now the system was designed to afford you the opportunity to get a warning on your first offense. If you ask for the data, and I hope that they get some data to look at it, how much warning has been given to individuals because it's electronic?
So that will be recorded?
Yes. So the system is. Because
that makes sense, right? I see you got a warning already. We don't have to rely on memory.
No.
Of an incident I may not be there for.
You pull up the person's driver's permit information, and you can see how many tickets the person would have acquired, or gained, or how many warnings the person. If the person has been warned multiple times, or say once or twice for this same offense, then the officer has the powers of discretion. I mean, there's no need.
But wouldn't there be some things that, yes, I understand they need to have some penalty because they've had warnings, but there might be something so minor, even if there's multiple infractions, are the merit points warranted?
The system is such that even the whole ticketing system, even prior to this whole thing coming into place with the fixed penalty and with the notices and all kind of, this fixed penalty system itself, you have a power of discretion, a discretionary power given to a police officer. And not all police officers or law enforcement officers, let me take away from police alone, law enforcement officers utilize that level of discretion, because the way the law is structured, you have a discretion. If I choose not to exercise that level of discretion and I go with, as per the law, I am within my rights to execute the judgment of the law. And the law states that if you don't have your seatbelt, ticket.
Well, so basically what you're saying, and this is pertinent to one of the other topics that I want to get to before we close out the show, but the situation with the demerit points and the failures with regards to the implementation might be, some of it is how it's written, whatever areas that did not allow leeway, right? Because you could have argued that everything needs to have demerit points, all 60-something of them, right? But part of it is also, I guess, for various reasons, the inability on the enforcement side or the exercise of judgment. And now, to what extent is that systemic? So you could fix it by adjusting the system of how the police operates. To what extent is that training, right? Or skills or customer interaction or what have you? Could you address it with that? But the reason why I say that is the implication is that the problem is not necessarily limited to the demerit point system. It's just that the demerit point system made it so obvious, and we had something to point out. Hey, this this is not going well because we have these other problems.
But I would say that over the years, I've been saying that the ticketing system has not been, the intent of it is to curb errant driving and for persons who breach those type of things. So you breach the law. Let's put it, let me give an example, and we continue to use it. You're driving on the road, you don't have on your seatbelt, you get a ticket. Fair enough.
Which is so funny. It's now automatic.
Right.
Seatbelt. I don't understand.
So you get a seatbelt. You get a ticket for it. You get a ticket for it, and you get demerit points on it. So let's go past the demerit points in terms of previously. So you get a ticket. What next? You get contested in court, you go before the court, and the court, you gave the, so on the first occasion, the officer didn't use any discretion because the excuse you gave, the officer didn't believe that the excuse was reasonable enough. Because that is your power, that is the authority that the officer has. You get your ticket, you go before the court, the court addresses it, and the court is of the opinion that the explanation at that point in time is reasonable enough, right? So you won your matter. In that circumstance, you won your matter. On the reverse side of it, police officer uses that discretionary power and doesn't give you the ticket. And which is the correct option? Is it supposed to be the police that make the judgment, or the police give you the ticket, go before the court, and you could contest that?
Yeah, but you see the problem with that scenario to rectify it, you have to go before the court. If the court system was, not as burdened, because I know a friend, I told you the story,
yeah,
more or less gets tickets on a regular basis. He's contested them all, he's won them all. The problem is, it's like months away each time, or a year, or some nonsense like that, right?
But, so it means what? Here's how it could turn. It does not augur well for the organization that when you go before the court for a ticket, just for a ticket, I'm not talking about a criminal offense where you have to have it. I'm just talking about a ticket where officers are losing matters before the court when it comes to tickets. Because why? Are you saying that I am vindictive, I am not giving the ticket properly?
Because I think in some cases, the officers probably even know the cases won't stand up. And they're just saying, you be inconvenienced because I want to inconvenience you.
So there's where I'm saying that there was a lot...
Not all.
There's a lot of issues with respect to the ticketing system where persons of the opinion, and we was discussing public opinion and public perception of certain things, that it is only about generating income, not... curbing the driving on the roads and the reckless type of behavior and the inconsiderate type of driving on the roads.
Because when you lead with, our demerit point system is a success, it generated this amount of income for us. I'm like, this is not supposed to be an income generating measure. We have 2 calls waiting. I do want to get to the age limit.
Sure.
Because I think a lot of what we were just talking about, or a lot of what you just said, is applicable to that. But we have Digger Martin on the line and another call on the line. We'll take Digger Martin. Good morning, caller on here.
Hello.
Morning, caller.
Morning.
Good morning, and welcome, ESP. A couple of issues, and I want to talk about the TTPS in 2 ways. One of the things that I've seen with the TTPS, they have normalized, this is my talk, my say, normalized driving on the shoulders. And I'm going to tell you, the current Minister of Defense, he was a host on another TV show, and I confronted him with the traffic of police officers using the shoulders of the road. UBH going north. I told them, what are we doing about that? The next 3 days I came back, and I asked him, why is this happening? And his response was, they most likely on an emergency, going on an emergency. But that continuously happens. So I want to know if every day there is going to be an emergency for these officers to abuse the shoulders of the road. More importantly, Sean, this is for you now. Remember what we were talking yesterday about the high-profile case, and it has to be managed properly. And I'm batting with the Southern Division lawyer, Attorney Syria, where she said the gentleman is indecent, and I'm going to call his name, where he had a press conference. Now, how and why the statement of the alleged victim is in the public domain? Who is responsible for that? So that's supposed to be at the top of the police. They're supposed to come and tell us an investigation going to be launched with this forthwith. Because that, to me, is already putting into the public to possibly attack the alleged victim. Is a woman. I'm looking for the woman group. I'm looking for the president to see how they come out and support the alleged victim, because everything is done pro the accuser. He's gone on the television and doing all kind of thing about anything. So the police, as I said, has to manage this properly. And two other things. I'm seeing where the information is coming out about visa restriction to the UK, where the former government has been telling us untruth. And we are hearing with the current Minister of Foreign Affairs, where they came to our government several times to say, what are you all doing with all of these alleged asylum seekers? So we knew about it. They wanted certain legislation enacted, and we run the UK. So that is why all citizens have to pay the price of things. And I mean, they say we cannot allow the former government to get away with all of these things. It's a union. And then the other thing, the $1 billion US, where apparently a little mistake that might have cost us $6 billion over the life, the contract. And what is surprising, whilst they were asking the current Minister of Energy, who made the mistake, and he said he's going to investigate it into the ministry, because his Woodside basically come back and tell him. Journalists asked him, was that part of a kickback?
Yeah.
The mistake he alluded to, or Halloran type kickback. I'm going to have a nice morning.
Thank you, caller. I wasn't going to say it all right, but you said it. Now, all right, I'll just say this. I don't agree that TPS normalized driving on your shoulder. I actually don't see TPS driving on the shoulder that much, but I don't go on the highways that much. But I'll always remember I'm on the Lady Young Road, and some truck decides, I don't want to wait on traffic, I'm going to drive on the shoulder. And immediately a police car was chasing after him and got him stopped. And I was like, ha ha, right, that's what you call justice. Now, the police driving on the shoulder, to some extent, I think that's more, I understand, yes. There are allegations, and it is thought that police abuse blue lights and sirens, and I guess in this case shoulders, to bypass traffic, right? And to some extent that is true. I don't think that's the main reason why people want to, trainees will do it regardless. They'll try and get away with it regardless, because they'll see the shoulder empty and be like, I just want to bypass the traffic. I mean, arguably it's the same psychology that some police officers do. Meanwhile, some of it is legitimate emergencies, right? It's hard to differentiate which one is which. I'll just say this, the UK visa situation, I'm not saying it's because of this, I'm not saying this is true. But when people say that politicians are lazy, it's kind of making me think, yeah, that's probably right. Like, there's some amount of just laziness that they did not treat with the problem. Unless we hear a actual defense, they haven't given us a defense. We got a straw man argument from Dr. Emery Brown that I was disappointed with. We have to go with what the Minister Sober said, because he's the only one saying anything pertinent to that part of the discussion. We have Marvel on the line. Good morning, caller, on here. Caller, good morning.
Hi, good morning. There's something I want to find out. I don't, because I hear people talking about the merit points, right? When you get, like, hoist for a ticket or something for the merit points or something like that, who that money will go to? The person who make the government, or the person who create the system?
When you say the system, like the police? Are you saying the police?
No. They say some
No, it would be
this.
If you say what the vendor who provides the technology for the system.
Right. Yeah.
No, I think it will go to the government.
The
government.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And next thing, some police don't have no discretion because sometimes you go in a car and you see the stuck, you stick on the door. You know, sometimes you go in a car and you see the stick and you take it out. You take it out to put it on back and send to police and you will give you a ticket. So a lot of them don't have discretion. Even if you try to talk to them, you can't talk to them.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to hear you.
It's
you know?
It's unfortunate.
So, yeah, because sometimes it's happened to me. Because even if you're going in the car, you're holding the car, and you try to put on the seatbelt and stick outside the door, what you have to do, when you open the door, you have to take all the seatbelt to open back, to put it on back, and you, a police rider, and you try to explain them what happened. And they don't want to understand. They give you a ticket, so you get ticket for the merit points, and they get a ticket for not wearing a seatbelt. You know, so that's 2 tickets there right away.
That is 1 ticket. You get a ticket for your seatbelt.
2 penalties.
But you get a ticket for the seatbelt, for failing to wear a seatbelt, and that ticket carries demerit points. So is the demerit points attached to your driver's permit?
Yeah. So there's 2 penalties.
So that's 2 penalties. So instead of you get 1, you get 2.
You get 2.
I find that so unfair to people.
You know? They are more or less, I believe it's signed, it might be signed by now, so that is going to be a thing of the past, if not immediately, very soon.
Because I find that's a little better. I would rather for 1, because you can get 1 ticket, but 2 things come up at the same time. Your head will spin so fast, sometimes you're busy and you all can't, and you not thinking, because when you're an older person, you have this to do and that to do and see about all these things, and something like that happened. Next thing you see a car to drive off on your seatbelt, rip you off with car door and everything. That's somebody's supposed to understand that. But apparently these young police don't understand that. They're a more mature police will understand. But these young ones, like, they love to give you a ticket.
Okay, thank you, caller. We have another caller waiting, so we'll have to end it there. I do want to respond to that because I think that's a customer service issue, but not necessarily one that people think it is. We have Move on the line, though. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning, Sean. Good morning, Mr. Ali.
Morning, sir.
You know, I always say, Sean, that I always go back to the first 30 years. Okay, but before I speak about that, and Mr. Ali, I don't want to put you on a spot, but so you can stay silent on this. But Sean, we have to be real and we have to be honest. There's a quota system with the police in Trinidad and Tobago. We know that. The police will continue to deny it. A lot of us know that it's true. When a batch of officers leaves stations, sometimes they leave with the intent of bringing back so many tickets. So this is one of the reasons, and no one wants to mention that publicly. This is one of the reasons that people get indiscriminate tickets, because they leave the station with the intention of, hey, we have to come back with so much and so much, because the ticket I got on Park Street for parking opposite a blue machine for someone to go and use the machine. Yes, the person took longer than I expected because there was some problem with the machine, but I was in the vehicle parked up with the engine running all the time. The officers were somewhere hiding because I was looking around, there were cars parked in front of me all the way up the road, but I was looking around. I didn't see any officer. When the person crossed the road and get back into my vehicle, and I'm about to drive, all of a sudden I see 2 officers walking on the road. Right? And then they're asking me the question, why you park here? And there's no, I said, but I was waiting on this person to use the machine. The officer says to me, so long. So in other words, they were there peeping, right? They couldn't know that my engine was running, but they know my car was there. But my point is, people boasted about the merit point system and alluding falsely that it's about is to change behaviors. The only way we will change the behaviors in Trinidad and Tobago for any activity, be it road traffic, be it basic crimes and stuff, law enforcement. We have not, in 2025, we have not reached the level of law enforcement that any sensible country should be at, and we keep denying that. The demerit point system did nothing to change driving habits. It was punitive, it was draconian. You cannot give somebody a ticket for $1,000 just for parking. Bro said that my engine was running, you didn't give him a chance to explain because you just wanted to give a ticket to meet your quota. We have to be honest. That is one of the problems with the police service. And no one would admit it. And citizens are not stupid, right? And I have to go back and say that no responsible police service, no responsible police executive could continue to have citizens suffering from a thing like noise pollution for 20, for 30, and just 30 years, and just making excuses. You all have a mandate to protect and serve. You all have to find solutions. Stop putting it on us and telling us that we must do this and we must go and make a statement. You want to put us at risk when you very well know that some of these people who creating the noise are thugs, right? Some of them have connections to the police service. All these realities, people don't come out and say outright. They don't say it publicly. And they are hidden there doing nothing. Unless we start speaking these truths, we will get nowhere. We will not be able to force these people who are being paid big salaries to act on our behalf. And we have to start telling the truth. I am a driver. I am on the road every day. And I can tell you the demerit point system did nothing to change the driving habits. We need to do better. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. I don't disagree with the caller. I do think it's a public perception of which I can't speak and say that it doesn't exist. I think it happened to my brother one time where, you know, the officer is around in Savannah. They just assume, oh, young boy in a two-door car must be going fast, and he actually wasn't going fast. He just didn't know what to do. And he was not at the practice back in, I don't know, like 2001 to be like, you know, the man is trying to keep me down, and I'm gonna argue with the police right now. It's like, no, it's not gonna. He's just gonna take the ticket and accept it. And it's like, was he speeding? No, not really. No, I mean, he might have been driving close to the limit or whatever the average speed of the other drivers were in Savannah. He just looked faster than everybody else, right? So we have, oh gosh, we have another call on the line. There's a lot to say, including customer service from the police. But Faisabad on the line, good morning, caller on here.
Hi, good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Yeah. Sir, I want to concur with the previous caller. The merit system was very punitive. It did nothing to really reform or rehabilitate any errant driver. Yes? And so I'm thinking that the government is taking a step in the right direction. Apart from the financial hardship that it has put people through, have them resort to all kind of nefarious activities because they want to pay the ticket. Truck drivers and everything destroyed families. Yes? And I'm saying to you, it have abusive and malicious officers I have seen on the road. Yeah, they do it for wickedness. If you tackle the girl, they want to get tickets until they're dead. You understand? So it was a kind of personalized thing in some end. And I'm glad that they have taken the opportunity to get rid of it and replace it with something sensible. The other thing, Sean, I want to touch on Dr. Amory Brown. You discussed him this morning with respect to Mr. Sean Sobel and his statement. Dr. Amory Brown, I must tell you that he was so ineffective that it didn't affect the PNM party that Dr. Rowley didn't seem fit to put him back as a candidate. That is to tell you how bad this gentleman is. You know, your own party doesn't seem to be able to want you to represent them. They pick up a youth man and they put in the fella come and win.
That harsh.
You understand what I'm saying to you?
I understand.
So, Mr. A.B. Brown, I am telling you, you need to reconsider rather than coming on the TV and making a nuisance or you play. Every day, the opposition has now become a nuisance, Sean. They now have become a nuisance. I mean, they're irritating people. When on TV, people take off the TV. With respect to the president, you know, I was looking at the statements he would have made on the political platform, and the kind of venom and strength that she evangelized the PNM with. It is hard to divorce yourself from that. And when I look at the appointments while she was president, who got senior council and what have you, and you look at the string of attachment, there's a graph that was.
Yeah.
It's difficult, almost impossible, for she to really say that she's independent. Mr. Vera, was one of the independents who would have been criticized not only this term, but the last term. I have somebody who is creating that kind of tension on the independent bench with suspicion, similar to Helen Drayton. You would have done something and not to put back that person. So I could only concur and believe that he was planted there to represent the PNM. I could only do that because you cannot have so many complaints about the gentleman over time and go back and reappoint him. Something has to be wrong there, my friend. Something has to be wrong. And if they're saying that they are independent as they were supposed to be, then the criticism shouldn't affect you. I mean, if you're a truly independent person, you really don't care what people think, you know, Sean.
Yeah. Caller, we have another caller waiting, so I'll have to ask you then there, because we still haven't responded to everything another caller has said, but we'll take the next call. Good morning, caller, you're on here.
Morning.
Morning.
Morning. Oh gosh, I lost my thought. Yeah. The
happens to be all the time, caller, don't worry.
Seatbelt business, right? The seatbelt.
Yes.
When a person is over a certain weight, right? To get a seatbelt, this be a little problem. But then, as a guy said this morning, making noise about seatbelt. What about the motorbike man? He has no seatbelt. Understand me? But what Arrival I need to do, because they make money off of this thing, because you have to go by them to get it. What Arrival I need to do is to go into the schools and run these classes. Licensing officer is supposed to go into these schools. You're supposed to be doing a test, right, as part of getting yourself prepared for getting your license. So when we started, because when I was growing up as a little boy back in the days, he used to come in schools and he'll tell you about the road and the traffic system and how to do and what not to do. I forget the name of the group, you start acting in the wrong ways, where they show you what is going on with the driving these little cars and all the different things and all that. And this is where we have to go back to these things to inform and teach them. And don't just talk. We have to do things. And this, that's enough for today. Okay.
Thank you, caller. Now, a lot of this talk, Ashraf, makes me wonder, right? It's cultural. And the numeric point system ain't cracking the cultural aspect of it.
No, it's not.
Where people just think they are entitled to drive at a certain speed, and it's fine because everybody does it. And because everybody does it, that makes it fine, right? And culture, and this is why I said, because I did want us to speak about the age limit increases. You also brought up that topic, so I'm like, yes, let's do that. Because I think a lot of that also is with regards to culture. Because we have a drinking culture, and then we have an underground weed smoking culture that has existed. Those who know that's been in existence well before I was an adult, right? And then you have, to some extent, an underground gambling culture, although I don't know to what extent that affects young people, right? I just don't. But my point is, I think similar to the failure of the merit points to address the fact that speeding and driving recklessly to some extent is part of the culture, particularly the speeding part. There's more to do with reckless driving, right? That you don't see quite as much, but anyway. With regards to drinking and underage drinking to some extent is part of the culture. So when they want to change these age limits now, part of me is thinking, I don't know if the enforcement could really counteract the cultural side of it, and the uphill battle, it might, on a practical level, and I think this is what some stakeholders say. So, because you're taking 18 to 21-year-olds and you're saying, well, now you all go drink underground. Don't drink in illegal areas. So it's even harder to enforce.
And this is where like I keep saying, the intention of the legislation is good. The challenge that is going to face now is the operationalization of this legislation and the enforcement of it. Just like everything else, the enforcement is not only for the police.
Because with marijuana, there's already some issues that we've spoken about off air. We won't go into it, but currently there's issues much less, you know, when you increase the age limit.
So there's already legislation in place within the laws that you cannot sell alcohol and cigarettes to persons under the age of 18. Right? It is there already. When you go out to all these bars, they must put it up, must identify it, all of that. Good, fair enough. But who's addressing the persons who are selling cigarettes, adults who are selling cigarettes and alcohol on the streets? Not in the bars, not in these things. There is a key area that has to be addressed, and I believe that the Minister of Homeland Security did in fact mention that in the briefing. He just said that he threw it out that there's nothing in the law that states that you have to have your ID card on you.
Right, yes.
So, and he said that they will be looking at some things coming later down. But he said that I don't know how it's going to look at, how it's going to be drafted.
We've spoken about this before. You've brought this up before.
And this is a very critical part in enforcing it. Because in Trinidad and Tobago, there is absolutely no law, with the exception of the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act, where you need to have your driving permit on your person when you're driving the vehicle, which would allow the officer to stop and ask for your name and address, which is failing to provide supply a name and address, and is an arrestable offense. So you must have that driver's permit on you for driving.
That still has the merit points.
Good.
So just beware.
So that is the only aspect of it. But the average citizen walking the rich streets of Trinidad and Tobago does not need to have any form of identification on them to produce, because the law does not say so. We do in fact walk around with our identification.
Yes.
But it does not, it's not in law for me to say who I am.
It seems a bit of an overreach to say, you know, by the law, you just have to have this, right? Because, well, what if I just want to leave my house to go check my neighbor, or I just want to go run quick to get some ketchup in the corner store, right? Like, you know what I mean? So
and those are the areas where discretion would get.
But we've already established.
Exactly. But when you
this is why I said there's a linkages, right?
Exactly. So when we talk about persons are selling alcohol, so you go to an event, you go to a bar, they may have a policy of only 18 and over into the venue. But who is ensuring, or I should say the word, who is policing that venue in terms of their own management, ensuring that these persons have their ID card coming into this venue? That is where society, or I think our society and all stakeholders within this area has to have a level of maturity and responsibility when it comes to there's specifically this legislation where we're going to increase the age, proposing to increase the ages.
Because I think one would think, oh, we're all adults, you could have the honor system, it's fine. Anybody who knows anything about our culture knows the honor system in this country, more often than not, does not work. It works in other cultures, and that's why we say this is a cultural thing. Part of it is I'm thinking, look, I don't know, because there's pros and cons. There's a part of me that does think it should not be that hard for everybody to always have ID on them, whether they're a pedestrian, whether they travel in taxi, whether they're driving, right? To some extent, that is a certain amount of responsibility. You get an accident, you're incapacitated, you're unconscious. They kind of need to know who you are, so at least they could maybe, who's your next of kin? We need somebody to authorize the surgery, whatever, right? We need blood transfusion, we need your medical records, whatever. We need to know who you are. You had an emergency, we need to know who you are to help you save your life.
Fair enough.
But there's always going to be, you know, unforeseen circumstances where, you know, now there are ethical questions, and I get that. Maybe it should be, look, if you want to buy alcohol, you have to have your ID on you. Because you have to be ready, similar to driving. You want to drive, you have to have your driver's license. You want to buy alcohol, you have to have an ID to prove your age. And if you can't do that, well, then you can't buy alcohol.
Exactly. So I know we are coming very close to the end. I think this conversation, we could continue this conversation because there's some key elements with respect to having identification on you. And one of the things I just want to make sure that people understand, and persons should understand this too. Having an identification card does not mean that you are 18 years.
That's the other thing. Yeah.
Because at the age of 16, 17, you can access an identification card, have a form of Trinidad and Tobago identification on your person. So if you present an ID card to you, there's a level of responsibility by the stakeholder to verify that you are actually 18 and over, not see an ID and say, okay, you have an ID, so you're old enough. Right? So there's a lot more in this discussion, and I believe that they will have much more conversations with respect to this. I know this is going to be a very controversial debate because I've heard a lot of controversial inputs into it already, stating that you could, 18 years, you could get married or younger, as you say, 18 years, but you can't drink. 18 years, you could join the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and carry a firearm, but you can't drink.
Or defense force.
Or defense. I don't think there's an equation that they could equate it so simple. Right? Because different policies apply to different organizations and different requirements. This is a general policy across that putting across the board for Trinidad and Tobago Trinidad and Tobago citizens. It has nothing to do with individuals alone. It's a policy across the board. So there's going to be a lot of conversation with respect to it, and some narratives, I don't like some of the narratives because it does not make any sense.
Or it's oversimplified.
And it's trying to simplify it.
Also, people need to understand, the law is at some point trying to compensate for societal failures. And it's never going to be, totally fair in that case.
But personally, for me, I think it's a positive move, it's a positive move in a good direction, because I've said over and over, we have not had any data to say that or presented by anybody that I have seen or read, right, that the decriminalization of marijuana has caused an increase in the amount of persons having access to and utilizing marijuana and also the other drugs that are available at this point in time.
Part of it is some people who think that, who say more young people are smoking. That might be true. However, it could also be true that similar to when the new age of media allowed people to see footage from war zones and all of a sudden war was really bad. I hate to tell this to you. All of the wars post-World War II, post-Korea, none of them came close to how bad World War II was. And the amount of carnage on civilian populations, right, in large cities, what they had to face. So all of the carnage in Vietnam and in the Middle East and all of that, and people were able to see that on television and say, oh my gosh, this is so bad, how could this happen, it's so bad, and look, 1,000 people died in a month or whatever. And meanwhile in World War II, you had thousands of people dying a day, military and civilians, because it was total war. And but we think we see war on TV and it's so bad, because it's what we see. And it might be the same thing. We see the younger people now smoking, but trust me, they were smoking before. I'm telling you. But with that said, a couple quick things. One, yes, the victim in that high-profile case, her information being out there can lead to her being publicly attacked. I have reasons for saying that. I can't necessarily say why, but I have specific reasons why I'll say that I fear, and I hope it doesn't happen, and that needs to be hunted down. But it's not just the police where that leak could have come from. Just remember that. It's not everything to be. But yes, somebody should address that with regards to moving forward, how they rectify that situation. With regards to the president, I didn't say it. I didn't go this far. But yes, there's at least one senior counsel appointment that's indefensible. And if she wants to say that she was not politically active for however many years, that singular senior counsel appointment of a sitting politician who nobody can give a justifiable argument that he deserves senior counsel, that basically says, no, you were very political. You were just not declared political. And last thing is this, with police, yes, I understand it's a quota, yes, I understand they're officers on a power trip, but part of it also is the phenomenon of customer service in that they deal with a lot of the public. And the problem is twofold. Part of it is them, it's still their problem, right? Part of it is the public, they're being bad with regards to their end of the interaction. Because the flip side is the police officers, not all of them are professional enough to deal with a public-facing role. So then they're going to be overly aggressive and overly intolerant and impatient with the public because I don't want to hear it. Because they would have had negative interactions, you know, in their career in that very day, maybe before you. And you're paying for Paul, and it's unfair because they're not professional enough. But the flip side is, that's why it's nice to be nice. Even if the police officer is treating you unfairly, you still need to try to hold up your end of the table so that you could say, well, it wasn't me because I wasn't aggressive with him and I didn't try to be belligerent or be combative. It's nice to be nice, even to those that mistreat you. So, thanks to the callers. Ashraf, thanks to you once again. I've made notes. We continue the conversation next week. Folks, I just want to remind you to stay safe. Remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. Be your brother's keeper over the weekend. It could be a good weekend. You could do so if you try. But like I said, it's nice to be nice, even to those who mistreat you, because we want society to improve, and somebody is going to have to make the effort to pay it forward. Don't just think about what you're getting reciprocated back in return. We do all of that so we can see each other next week. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Get ready for the biggest business-to-business event of the year, the Trade and Investment Convention, happening on July 17th to 19th at the Centre of Excellence in the Koya. Doors open from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on business days and 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Consumer Day. Dress code in effect for business days. Park and ride available from Constantine Park and UETGR North